Are you ready to live life to the full? Are you ready to rise up and live a life of honor? Are you ready to boldly step into a life of courage? This is the Manlihood Mancast.
Welcome to the Manlihood Mancast. I'm your host, Josh Hatcher. Today's episode, we have a special guest, Robbie Sondag. Robbie has a YouTube channel called Manly Moments. He posts a lot in the Manlihood ManCave, and he's a fantastic guy. So I want you to check it out, listen to the things he's got to say. I'm really excited about this interview. Hey man, I see you. I see your fire going out. I see your marriage barely holding on. I know you're broke, wore out, and at the end of your rope. I've been there, and it sucks. It sucks the spark right out of you, till all you have left is a pile of wet wood. It feels like it's never gonna burn. I can't fix your problems. I can't make her love you again. I can't lose 50 pounds for you or fill your bank account. But I can remind you of who you are. I can share some of my fire. I can help you make a plan to get your life back on track. So let's go. Let's do this. Let's reignite our lives. There's a lot at stake. No one wants their marriage to end in divorce. No one wants to wallow in despair or to the dark places that follow. So let's do it. Let's reignite our lives. Let's reignite our passion, our marriage, our health, our careers, our dreams, our mindsets. Get reignite today. Hey guys, welcome back to the Manlihood Mancast. I'm Josh Hatcher, and we've got a special guest with you today, my friend Robbie Sondag, who is out in Indiana, and we've had some really neat, kind of strange ways that we've been connected through mutual friends, even though we are nowhere near each other geographically, which is kind of neat, I think. So it's always fun when you have mutual friends and you can talk about things like that. It's kind of fun. Robbie, you've got a really interesting YouTube channel that you put out. I know you've shared a lot with our Men in the Manlihood Man Cave, our Facebook group, and you've interacted with us there quite a bit. And the videos that you make are a lot of fun. Maybe could you tell me a little bit about your channel, the stuff that you're doing, and what kind of drives that?
Yeah, it's called Manly Moments, and it's a labor of love at this point. I've been at it for almost 3 years now, and started it. I've always been fascinated with YouTube and always been a creative type guy, and so I figured someday I would make something, but I just didn't know what it would be. And at the church I'm at, I lead a men's group, and we were taking a break for the summer a few years ago. It was we meet once a week on a Tuesday night for kind of small group type stuff, and then we were getting ready for our summer break. And I thought, this year I'm gonna hand out a survey and just find out about the guys a little bit more. And so on the front side of the survey was general questions. What did you like about this year's group? What did you like about the snacks? What did you like about the curriculum? All this general stuff. And then on the back was more personal questions. And it was an anonymous survey. They didn't have to put their name on it, but it was questions like, how often do you go to church? Or how often do you read your Bible? How often do you drink a beer? How often do you look at porn? How often do you pray with your kids? It was general information. It was specific information. And when I looked at all the results, and this is like 50 core guys that come regularly, good guys. And two things about that survey, the results. One was that, it didn't surprise me, was that the higher their spiritual disciplines, reading the Bible, going to church, praying, the higher that was, the lower their tendency to sin was. And the thing that surprised me, though, was the amount of guys that struggle to have any kind of disciplines to keep that sin out of their life. Like, oh my gosh, this is a core group, and they're struggling even to crack open the Bible once a week. These are good men leading a family. I'm like, how are you doing that? And so that was the kind of the impetus. I'm like, I got to get this thing started here. I need to at least put together some kind of a weekly devotional on YouTube. And when you do a YouTube search for men's devotionals, do you know what you find?
Yeah.
Not much.
Yeah,
you might find like an hour-long sermon or a bunch of random things, but there's not a lot of stuff for men on YouTube with regard to, and I'm not talking about in-depth Bible studies. I'm talking about just practical information for guys to learn how to be a man.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the impetus of it. And I thought I'll do this during the summer once a week. And of course, I fell in love with it. The guys in the group loved it. And I thought, well, maybe this can grow a little bit and go beyond the church walls. And it doesn't have to be all churchy. It can be, how to go hunting, how to shoot a bow and arrow, how to fix a toilet, stuff that guys need to know. And
I think that's my favorite part is like the spiritual stuff is awesome, and you do a really good job at breaking it down, making it simple, which is something that typically the church in general doesn't always do. I think we like to overcomplicate things, but I like that it's simple. But honestly, I think my favorite part is these little videos where you're out doing something fun or something goofy, and that is the thing that many times churches or men's groups forget, is that guys like to have fun.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate that part and that aspect, especially of the channel.
Well, and what's funny is the purpose of trying to get men into the word more, those get the fewest views versus the fun stuff.
Yeah.
And really, and that's okay. Most guys, and I'm just like this too, it's very rare that I will repost a video or share something or even comment on stuff, because that's what the women do and that's what the teenagers do. And it really has to tickle my fancy for me to repost something, because it makes you vulnerable and you don't want to be laughed at. He thinks that's funny or he thinks that's good. And so it's a tough audience to crack, right, these men. And as you know, the way algorithms and stuff are set up, the more comments, likes, shares, subscribe, all these things play into how much this thing goes up to the top of the chart and gets circulated. And so it is not for the faint of heart to just hope to get a viral video and make it work. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I know that's one of the things that I kind of had to settle into as I've been building Manlyhood is, I want to work hard. I want to get it out there. And my feedback that I get when I run into guys that I know that are interacting with our stuff, maybe I don't see much from them, but I hear all the time from people, oh man, I love the stuff that you're doing with Manlyhood. I watch everything. I see all the posts. Like, I don't think I've ever seen any feedback from you, so it's nice to know that, It's just, and I think that's, like you said, like the manosphere is what they call it, the content that's being created for men. Men don't interact with it a whole lot on social, and that's fine. It just kind of does sometimes feel like, man, nobody's seeing this, but they are, it's getting to who needs to see it,
Yeah, and you can feel like you're spinning your wheels sometimes. And if it weren't a labor of love and a conviction of, I think this is making a difference, I wouldn't do it, because it's just too time consuming. But there's something fun about creating something and knowing it's for a bigger purpose than just a laugh. Even though it's fun to laugh. And I know from growing up, and statistically, I grew up in a small town, one of 11 kids, and my dad was a World War II veteran and ran the hardware store in town, but he got sick when I was 6. And so from age 6 to 16, for me, he was sickly and just barely making it. And then he passed away when I was in high school. And so here I was entering young adulthood, kind of guessing at what it meant to be a man. And so I didn't know how to tie a tie or how to change the oil, didn't know how to ask a girl out for a date or how to interview, all these things that you'd think most young men would know. I'm guessing. Of course, you don't admit that, you just fake it.
Right.
And then, you get married and your wife thinks you should be just like her dad. Dad always did this. How come you're not doing this? Because I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to change a sub pump. I don't know how this stuff works. And so, but if you look statistically, 40%, I don't know if it's 40%, it's 18 million households are fatherless. So a little over 1 out of 4 kids are raised without a dad around. And so, I had my dad at least until high school. A lot of these kids don't have it at all. So there's definitely a need for stuff like how to change the oil or how to change a headlight, just practical stuff that guys look at. I did a video on a whim about 6 months ago because I didn't have an idea for that week, and it was how to open a stuck jar lid. Now you'd think, right, that's no big deal. Everybody knows how to do that. Right. And it was 7 ways to open a stuck jar lid. And that thing gets hits all over the world. I'm just blown away by how many thousands of people watch that silly little video.
Yeah.
And they compliment, they comment on it. I'm like, I need to come up with more stuff like that seems so elementary that people are searching for it.
It's very true, though, and it's funny how many of those little things that we do learn from our dad, or, I mean, it is helpful that this generation has Google, and so they can Google a lot. I guess maybe, though, guys like us need to be answering some of those questions so that Google can find them, right? So,
right.
That is cool. I love that. How to open a stuck jar lid. And I can remember my dad teaching me how to do that. So you tell me, you said that your dad passed away. You were 16 when that happened, or
I think I was 17, right around there. It was my start of my senior year, so I was young for my age, and yeah, he was a good dad. And the irony, he worked at the hardware store. He ran the local hardware store, and I still didn't learn all these things. I was number 9 out of 11, so you kind of get lost in the shuffle at that point.
Right.
And it's okay though. We have a good family, and but it was guessing at a lot of things. Not the least of which was dating, and just sometimes you guess wrong and you fake it, and you just keep moving. My son, who's now 20, and we'd always talk about this, and he would call it, "There's a lot of boys out there walking around in men's bodies." I said, "You're absolutely right. There are 30, 40, 50-year-olds that are still little boys inside. They've never been taught to grow up," and you see this in the phenomenon that's happened in this last generation with the extended adolescence, is what I call it. Young men who are in their 20s, even early 30s, that kind of get a free pass at getting a job, or they're living more for the next video game that's going to come out, or the next Avenger movie, or the next skateboard. Those aren't bad things, but there's a big lack of motivation. There's a big kind of a slothfulness of life. There's unmotivated, and I don't know why the culture gives them a pass on it, but it's frustrating. And I think the fatherless thing has a lot to do with that.
Yeah, I think about a quote that I heard. I think it's an African proverb that if the boys are not initiated, they'll burn the village down. Because we need that almost that transition. We need that moment where, yeah, I'm a man. And it's funny because sometimes fathers get that and they pass it along very clearly, and sometimes kids have to just figure it out. And somewhere along the line they may, but you're right, there is that extended adolescence. That's kind of...
There's also a biblical verse that says, if you don't work, you don't eat. And
right.
I'm sure my son knows that one, because
yeah,
I'm not going to provide forever for these kids. And about 15 years ago, when we started our men's group at church, we were doing a promo video. And so a friend of mine, the video guy, we went downtown Fort Wayne and did man on the street interviews, where we just went up to men and randomly asked them, when does a boy become a man? And the answers were pretty amazing. They were both very funny and very sad. Funny because you'd get every kind of answer conceivable, from when you graduate, or when you join the army, when you get a tattoo, when you drink your first beer, you name it. And that was when a boy became a man, in so many different guys' answers. And then it was sad because there was no one definition that defined what it meant to be a man in our culture. And so the question becomes, how can you expect a guy to act like a man if you can't even define what it means to be one in the first place? It's a very telling question. And when we were doing this, the guy that I was working with, after about a half hour doing it, he looked at me and goes, well, how do you define what it means to be a man?
Yeah.
Do you know the answer to this? And I said, I do. And I said, I've been taught that a real man is somebody who rejects passivity, accepts responsibility, leads courageously, and then invests eternally. It's a 4-part answer. And he's like, that's pretty good. Where did you get that? And I said, well, that's from our group, what we've studied, and it's biblical. You're not going to find a verse that has those in it, but it's referenced. And so, yeah, the guy that wants to reject passivity, which we're all passive by nature, we'd much rather lay on the couch and let our wife let the dog out. And we accept responsibility that comes our way, because we've got a responsibility as a man to do things. And then we lead courageously, whether we know it or not. And then we invest eternally in things that are beyond us. And that's where the real reward comes. So it's you give guys a compelling, concise definition like that they can actually own, and it can change guys, but they have to understand it. So,
yeah, I think it's a great explanation and definition. So, with the men's group that you lead, did you have a book that you were going through, or curriculum? Were you guys kind of?
Yeah, we went through. It was called Men's Fraternity when it first came out. Robert Lewis out of Arkansas. Great stuff. 3-year type curriculum. And then they eventually updated that and changed the name to Authentic Manhood. I think I've got our little Authentic Manhood shirt on here.
Awesome.
And so, and that was kind of a revamp of some of the same material, just repackaged, and that was okay. And we've done a lot of other stuff over the years too, because what I've found with the men, it's not, as long as the material's solid, it's not about the material. Mm-hmm. It's about the connection. My wife could say to me, hey, I'm going out for coffee with so-and-so tomorrow night, and it'd be no big deal. That happens all the time. But if she told me, hey, tomorrow night's yours, go out with whoever you want to, I'd be like, who am I going to call? Guys just don't have that flexibility. We just don't do that. It takes more of a setup, and it has to be doing something. We don't just sit around and drink coffee typically. Yeah. And so it's really hard for guys to connect with any regularity or intentionality other than, talking sports, weather, and stuff like that. So the men's group really, even though the curriculum's good and the snacks and food are really good, it's really that table time of just talking about life and sharing. And it doesn't have to be that deep or profound, but it gets a lot deeper than you'd expect. So it's a pretty amazing deal.
I think every time that I've been in a men's group, we've always, well, at least the ones that I led anyway, we always found that we pretty much abandoned the book after whatever book we were going through after a few weeks, because stuff comes up that is probably more important than whatever was in the book anyway. And I mean, there is good stuff we learned from books. I can think of several that we've learned some good stuff from, but I know lots of conversations around campfires and picnic tables, and that's honestly where the good stuff comes in,
It is. Since the big Corona thing, our men, we've got a kind of a chain going with Zoom calls. So I talk to all the leaders on Tuesday nights for a half hour, and then I release them. They call their little groups, and surprisingly, it's gone well. I thought that would just kind of fade away, but it's gotten almost better because there is no curriculum to go over. They're just getting right into life, and that's kind of fun to see, and really just charge these guys. They'll kind of use the Manly Moment videos I produce as kind of a springboard for a topic. But I'm like, it's not about the questions. It's just it's getting into their lives and letting them talk and ask a question and just shut up and let these guys share. Because left to our own vices or our own isolation, men do not drift towards excellence. We drift towards our selfish, sinful nature. And so if you're not processing that and striving for something, you're not going to drift. Nobody drifts to become the first man on the moon. You work towards stuff that is worthwhile, and you are encouraged. And so a lot of times men might have had bad experiences with churches or with ministry or anything like that. And perhaps it was from an upbringing, or perhaps it was from a church that was so good at beating guys down about what they should be doing, what they're doing wrong, all their sins. And I've never been about that. Sure, guys have sins, but I'm much more about building guys up and investing in them about what they can become versus just tearing them apart and being that nag. They get enough nagging probably from home and from culture. And men are the butt of all jokes. Every movie, every sitcom, every commercial, we take it on the chin because it's just an easy target. So
well, and sometimes we make it easy, but
yeah. And believe me, I like humor and jokes as much as anybody. But if you look a little beyond that, it's like, wow, they really just keep ripping us.
And I think that I do think that there's a strategy there culturally to say that men are not important or needed or irrelevant, and I don't think anything could be further from the truth.
Right. So it's really about helping men, and I say this all the time with the guys. So if you know who you are and what you're about, life is a heck of a lot easier. But most guys don't know who they are or what they're about. They just kind of drift along and hope for the best, and that's really a hard way to go through life, and not a very good way to succeed either. So really passionate about guys pursuing something.
I know a lot of men who have said to me over the years, they've said something like, I have a hard time making friends. What kind of advice would you give for somebody in that position, do you think?
That's a great question. Whenever we do a session on loneliness or isolation, that's the one they all clamor towards because they all relate to that. And it's hard because I remember when I was in college, I had a boss who was probably, I don't know how many years older than me, but he would always say, if you can get to age 40 and count the number of friends on one hand that are really good friends, consider yourself lucky. And I was thinking, I got so many friends in college. What's he talking about on one hand? And then you get older and you realize how hard it is as a man when wife and kids and responsibilities and work and everything come along. You don't have time to have close friends. And yeah, to have 5 good friends would be pretty rare for somebody 35 and up. And I always define a really good friend as somebody you could call at 2 a.m. if your car breaks down, and they're going to jump in their car and come out and help you, no questions asked. But how do you get those? If you're isolated and kind of, found yourself in this position, like, how do you become friends with new guys? How does this work? And that's, I think it takes some vulnerability, joining a men's group or going to a site like Manlihood MANCAVE or seeking out men that are going to be a little bit more honest. And again, thank goodness we have platforms online to be able to start stuff like this. I was on a, I don't remember what it was called. It was another Facebook men's page I was checking out. And just by happenstance, one guy posted a question, what does it mean to be a man? I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're asking that question. And within like 20 minutes, I couldn't even get a comment in. It filled up with like 200 comments within a half hour. I'm like, wow, he really struck a nerve here. And I'm reading through all the comments thinking, wow, these are as bizarre as the man on the street interview question answers. They were all over the place. And so I chime in with more of a biblical answer about, what it meant and how I'm basing it on truth. And of course, nobody responds to my answer at all because they're not going to touch anything to do with biblical knowledge. That's so old-fashioned. But if you're not grounded in truth and you're taking your cues from the culture or from polls or opinions or what's popular, boy, you are just going to drift along out in the ocean of nowhere, and you're not going to be grounded. And so it's really important if guys do want to pursue a group that they understand who they are and what they're about. And if they don't know, yeah, you would help them. I'd help them. There are guys like us that will help them understand, not to be part of me, but to be part of truth. And truth is a hard thing.
So Robbie, you talk about a lot of the things you had to learn as a man, you kind of had to figure out. Were there men in your life that, other than your dad, that you could go to and talk to?
Yeah, surprisingly, different men came along. I mentioned that boss. He was a godly man. We didn't talk religion or anything like that, but he was just a great example of what it meant to be responsible. I remember many times looking at him thinking, I want to be like that someday. I want to be somebody who loves his job, is really good at his job, and people respect him. And so that was just a great example. And then later, I think when I was in my 30s, I had a pastor that I really looked up to. I thought, gosh, this guy, he would take me away for weekends, and we would sit at the campfire and talk life. And he really answered a lot of deep questions it was just really a good thing. And I remember a few years ago, we were talking about this in our men's group, about how it's good to have somebody feed into your life. And we were talking about, can you list anybody? And I was talking about my dad and my old boss and this pastor. And then it dawned on me, like, well, who do I got right now? I mean, am I just going to guess from this point forward? I've got a wife and kids now. Who's the next guy I'm following? And so there was an older guy in our group who was a retired counselor, godly man, very wise. And I remember I didn't know him that well, getting up the guts to ask him if he wanted to meet and just see where it led to. And it was almost like asking a guy out on a date. It was so weird. But of course, He was honored. Honored, I asked him. And we've been meeting now for probably 10 years, once a month. There's no agenda. There's no curriculum. We sit down, have coffee, and just talk through what's going on. And I feel like I'm getting free counseling advice from a professional, but it's really a blessing. And I wish other guys had that. And they can have that. You just got to be willing to ask and not be afraid of a no, and keep moving on till, because otherwise you are just guessing. You're kind of hoping things work. And there's always somebody out there. And the older guys are honored to be able to invest in you. So
yeah, I've got a few guys like that in my life right now too, and I've had conversations about that. We've talked about it, and I think a lot of them are, where I'm at. I always think a lot about purpose and about vision and mission and those kinds of things. And these guys are like, well, when you get to this age, you're more concerned about whether you missed it or not, and what you can do to keep somebody else from missing it. But that's part of it. They're thinking about legacy. They're thinking about, okay, what's going to be remembered about me when I'm gone. I don't know where that age break is. I think it might change depending on the person, but
yeah. Well, they've often heard it said that when you get to be an old man and you're sitting on your front porch swing, you're not relishing the bass boat or the nicely manicured lawn. You're thinking about the name you've created for yourself and your family and your legacy, and whether you've screwed up or whether you've done any good at all. And when you're young, we don't always think that way, but it comes up quick.
It does.
And so it's about daily making wise choices and living for something beyond yourself. And that's very wise stuff that your friends have told you, though.
Yeah, I've been meaning. We were just about to start putting together I don't tell them this, but in my mind, it's the old guys club. I wanted to get a bunch of old guys together for coffee once a month and chat. And then, COVID-19 happened, and now we're like, okay, we'll come back around to that. We'll circle back to that in a little bit here if you don't die first. So that sounds heartless. I'm just being silly, but it's
No, I know.
And I know that some of them are listening, and they're like, oh, shut up, Hatcher. But
well, there's always, if we're alive and breathing, there's always something to contribute. And I learn a lot from younger guys than me, and I learn from older guys, and certainly have a good group of guys the same age as me that we get along and do a lot of stuff and just hold each other accountable. And that sounds so cliche and like, oh, come on. But again, you take it one step at a time, and don't give up.
Yeah.
Gosh, these guys, they just, even though my title at church, I'm on staff at this big church, and I'm the children's director. And so I deal a lot with kids and kid volunteers. But I lead this men's group. And people often ask me why. And I said, because the men, if you can get the men going in the right direction and leading their family well, it takes care of almost all the problems I deal with the kids, because they need that guy to lead and step it up and lead. And so I as a result, seems like I always have guys coming into my office to chat or to talk about life. And the most common age group in my office would be the guy between 28 and 35 who has had a little taste of life. He's kind of along a little bit now, and he's trying to figure out what the heck, how do I change my circumstances? I mean, I'm kind of stuck. I've got a wife and 2 kids, and I hate my job. I didn't get this degree I was hoping to get, and now how do I change this? And I'm like, well, it's not too late to change, but you've got to take it one step at a time. And you got to, I build into them all the time. Like, are you honest? Are you hardworking? Are you fair with people? If I'm an employer, I'm looking for people like that I can mold. Don't give up and say, I don't have a degree in computer stuff. It doesn't matter. If you are a hard, conscientious worker, there's somebody out there that wants you.
Yeah. And
so it's interesting now.
I think there's going to be a lot more people here very soon asking a lot of those questions too. How do I get a better job because I don't have one now? And but yeah, it'll come together, I believe. I think it'll start to make sense for everybody, and they'll be like, okay, yeah. I'm hoping that we can offer some of that direction. I think that's probably another whole podcast episode, how to be employable.
It really is. I mean, it's most guys, we talked about the loneliness, but the other issue, and you don't hear this talked about a lot in church, is just the issue of work in general. why it's important to do your best and to be on time and to be honest and be a man of integrity, and what it's like. Every guy, I think, in the back of their mind has a dream of what they really want to do, and ultimately you can kind of scrape all that down and summarize it by saying every guy wants to get paid well to do something they really enjoy doing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I like making videos. You like doing all the stuff you do. Wouldn't it be great to get paid really well and do it well at the same time? And that'd be the life. And so that doesn't mean you don't pursue those dreams. It just means there's a reality check too. My son wants to write a book. And that's great. We're all about creativity here. But if you don't work and pay bills, you're just going to be a starving artist. And we know there's a ton of those out there. So the real artists understand you've got to pay bills, you've got to be responsible, and you work your way towards the full-time gig, but it doesn't come. Very few overnight successes, and the overnight successes tend to flame out anyhow. So
right. Well, and even an overnight success, it didn't just happen most of the time. Like there was a lot of time put into it, a lot of sleepless nights at the typewriter. Well, not a typewriter, but you know what I mean. That was put into there and invested in. And then they happen. Yeah, there may have been some quote unquote luck involved, but there was a lot of work there too. So
the question is always, how long did your overnight success take? It took about 15 years.
Yeah.
It's never really an overnight.
It was a lot of failure first.
So yeah.
I also tell people too, get your, don't be afraid to have a hobby that you enjoy, even if it's a hobby that pays something, but have a hobby because, if you're not getting the fulfillment you want from your job, get it somewhere else. You still need your job. Yeah. So, take care of that job. And if you want a better job, work towards getting a better job. But
yeah, without a doubt.
But if you're fulfilled hunting, so hunt on the weekends. Don't expect to be a professional hunter, but, invest in those things that fulfill you,
That's exactly right. Now, I see you guys do like a camp every year too, don't you? Kind of a man type thing.
Yeah. This year we're actually taking a year off. Last year I had my oldest two got married in the same year, and then this year my son's graduating high school, and we had originally had intended on taking the time off so we could kind of refocus, and now I knew we were going to make a big trip for graduation, but now everything's changing anyway, so it's probably a good year to go ahead and take the year off, and we'll come back to it again next year. So
we do an annual see that man camp thing. So and it was supposed to be this coming weekend, and so the guys are bummed, but we all understand it's just different this year, and it's just a fun weekend getaway, and guys can let loose and enjoy and learn some things too. But maybe we'll do that in the fall.
Yeah,
it's good to have
It's definitely been a cool experience. It's 3 years that we did it. We did one here in Pennsylvania, then one in Ohio, and then the next one in Pennsylvania. And the guys that go, they come back and they tell you, it was life-changing. And I that excites me because I know that I feel like I had a part in that. But honestly, when you ask them, what was it that changed your life? And they'll tell you it was like, honestly, making friends, having somebody to talk to, just getting away and having time to think. I think that's a real valuable thing, to have that retreat concept of, okay, let's refresh, let's recharge,
No doubt. Yeah, we don't get much of a break. We live in a culture that's so fast-paced, and as the guy, we bear a lot of the responsibilities. And when you look at what's happened this past month and a half now with, sports, which is kind of a thing we put on a pedestal, and when you look at the restaurants and the entertainment and the movies and all the businesses, and so you shut all that down and then confine people to their homes, we are forced, and it's so uncomfortable because we want to get out, we want to keep moving, and we want to get back to normal. Well, it might not be back to normal the way we remember it, and maybe it shouldn't be, but to slow things down a little bit. And most guys really struggle with having any kind of introspective thinking. They just want to keep moving towards whatever. Like, just slow down and figure out what the heck you're doing and why you're doing it, and let it make some sense. And I think every guy, and I know I've had a few moments the past month and a half like this too, where it's that moment where fear kind of sets in, and maybe it's because the news, you can read one article or watch one video and you'll be swayed all over the place. You don't know what's true anymore. It doesn't matter if it's just statistics or deaths or political stuff. It's mind boggling. And so when I get to that, and I had a moment like that the other night, it wasn't about poor me. I was thinking about my kids, and that's where fear can kind of come in. And I had to go back to, hold on a second. I need to go back to truth. What is really true here? And I go back again. I open up my Bible and I start affirming what I really believe and how, I've gone a lot of years of my life. I've missed very few meals. I don't think God's going to stop taking care of me yet. And it doesn't mean I'm special. It just means let's have some perspective here.
Yeah.
And we're blessed and just really need to let today's problems be today's problems, not worry about tomorrow, and have some confidence. So it's, but I think every guy has those moments, and some more than others, and some almost more deservedly so than others. But I really wish guys would to find out who they are and what they're about and get grounded in truth is the real deal.
I think that when we have those moments of quiet, those moments of fear can kind of take over because sometimes we don't know the answers to those questions that you just said, who we are and what we do. And, and then if we have to stop and face that can be overwhelming. And and I think that's why we avoid those silent times, those quiet times, is so that we don't have to deal with the anxiety. It's easier to watch Netflix than it is to think about. Oh yeah. Than to feel afraid, and
I think, I've watched, I'm not a big TV watcher anyhow, but over the past month and a half now, watched just about every show, rerun, Netflix, anything I could think of that would interest me. And I've seen everything I almost want to see. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to get out and do something. Or I just need to crack open a book again and just relax. And I haven't read every book I want to read.
That's
so
true. That's true. I can relate. I'll get sucked into something. I was telling my wife the other day, I don't always sleep well at night. It takes me a while to fall asleep, and I've kind of trained myself to fall asleep watching Netflix. And I was thinking, that's probably not good. She said, "Tell me about it." But
unfortunately, we become our habits, and whether they're intentional or not, it's really, really challenging for guys as they get older to develop new habits that are healthy. I'm not just talking about eating and exercise. I'm talking about just everything from the reading and the bedtime stuff. And I know I shouldn't probably do much screen time before I go to bed, and your mind gets wired, and then I still do it. And then I wonder why I'm tired the next morning. So
we'll figure it out. I have a list of things I'm working on. That's on there.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Rob, I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing with us. You've had some tremendous insights. And if people want to follow up with you more, what's the best way for them to...
Great question. My primary thing on the internet is on YouTube. It's Manly Moments. So check out Manly Moments. Subscribe to the channel if you want to. Leave some comments, or just search for something you're interested in on that, because I think I've got like 300 videos out, and it's just a lot of fun to make them. Or if you've got something you want to offer me, maybe you'll get featured on my show just like I'm featured on Josh's show here. So we're all in this together, and just I'm appreciative of your channel, what you're about too, Josh, because we're doing the same thing. We're trying to help other guys along with this journey of life here that makes some sense, and so it's fun to be in partnership with you on that.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate all of your feedback and insight into the Man Cave that we're doing, and what you're doing on your page as well. And I'm grateful for the chance to kind of connect with you, and it's been fun getting to know you over the past few years. So.
Yeah, it's the first time we've ever met face to face, and we're still not face to face.
Yeah, no, we're gonna have to do that. I've got family in Indianapolis, so maybe I'll come through and go out the extra few miles to visit. So that'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, I don't make it out to Pennsylvania very often. So.
All right. Well, thank you again, my friend, and
thanks, Josh.
We'll have you on the show another time, maybe.
Well, that'd be great.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.
You want to be a better man? Check out our website, manlihood.com, for blogs, videos, and more from our Manlihood team. You can also join our private Facebook group, Manlihood Man Cave, where you can meet up with a band of brothers who will challenge you and help you on your journey of manhood. Be sure to check out all our resources at manlihood.com/store. This episode is produced by Hatcher Media for manlihood.com. Our manly theme music is from Austin Sterling and also from Mark Cruz. Sure to subscribe and leave a review on iTunes, YouTube, or whatever you're listening to. Tune in again for more of the Manlihood Mancast.